Um, who knows? Maybe they want you to facilitate all the time. I'll just be quiet. I'm sure that would be fine with somebody. No, it's good to see you. Thank you. It's just thank you for all the work. I know we're shifting things around. We have a few guests. So I know Larry has got some time, wants to frame an important agenda point. Larry, thank you for joining us, even taking some time away from your family. We really appreciate that. And then I know Michelle is facilitating sort of another presentation. So what we'll do is we'll navigate that. And I think Mayor Pro Tem has to leave at around 6:30. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if there's anything that you would like to add or say, Mayor Pro Tem, if we don't get through the presentations in a time to where you could say anything, if you want to message me or something, I can relay whatever information you would like to share. So, okay, great. So I would like to welcome Larry. Thank you for being here, and we'll let you go ahead and kick off our meeting for this evening.
Oh, thank you. Good evening once again, everybody. It's great to be with you here this evening. And again, apologies for not being with you in person. I'm joining some family from out of town here for a dinner very shortly. So I wanted to do that, but I really needed to connect to this group. And I'll just start by saying we've gone a little bit slow, but to go fast. Related to some work that we're doing. I should introduce myself. I'm Larry Dorr, Deputy City Manager and Chief Financial Officer. One of my responsibilities includes leading our human resources function at the city, and I'm wearing that hat here tonight with you all. This past June 13th, our City Council authorized a position for our city that involves your work. The title for that job is Equitable Processes Coordinator, and it's a historic opportunity for our city and for our workforce. And so related to that, a couple of things I'd like to share. I think one of my team members shared out the 6-page job description. It's 2,000 words, and I know there's a lot there, but I would really personally welcome your thoughts, feedback, and response to that. It's a first job description of its kind that we've drafted, and I would welcome your input. We would like to get this job posted as soon as next week. We're hiring nearly one person a day at the City of Westminster. It's a very eventful time, and we have to really focus on our core services, meaning our public safety and utilities operators, and filling those positions. Our human resources department, again, we started 13 people last Monday. I don't know how many we started this Monday. I've been a little disconnected from that for this week, but it's a very active human resources environment in this current labor market. So I'd like to get your attention to that. If you did not receive the job description by email, please reach back out to Kate and or Cody, and we'll make sure that you get a copy of it. I do mention there's a lot of information in there, but again, I'd welcome your feedback. We think we've built a really good job description based on best practices and national job scope of this kind. But again, we would welcome your input, and I will share out, if it hasn't happened, my business email address. And I would invite you just to contact me directly via email, or you can call and just talk to me one-to-one about observations, thoughts, and input you would have on this very unique job description that we think is going to bring significant value to our workforce. The second thing that I would invite you to do, so timing is a little bit of the essence, and hopefully you can get a chance to do that. The other thing we would like to invite your chair to be a part of our evaluation and screening process. We anticipate having interview panels and boards to screen the finalist applicants, and we would welcome the input of your chair to be a part of that process. And relative to that, we will, if we get this posted next week, like we hope to do, and I think we will, then we'll probably have a period of time, typically 2 to 4 weeks, for candidates to submit their applications. We'll have a preliminary screen from HR for minimum qualifications, and then we'll get into some interview processes. And we'd like to have your chair be a part of that final screening process. And during that period of time, it would be helpful for you to share with your chair, some of the key attributes and critical elements of the candidate's knowledge, skills, and abilities, so that your chair is equipped as possible to assist in that selection process, which will no doubt involve folks across our organization, from public safety and our utilities to our parks, recreation, and some of our administrative services, because our lines of business and our lines of work are very diverse and involve a lot of different experiences and perspectives. So we think that this is going to be quite a selection process, and again, a real keen opportunity. And ultimately, the successful candidate will likely work very closely with this board. We would anticipate that going forward. So again, thank you for letting me take 5 or 8 minutes here to just kind of share that out. And again, happy to answer any questions, but I think the big work is just kind of leaning into this job description, letting us know what you've seen in your places of employment and your personal experiences, and carrying it forward.
Thanks so much, Larry. We appreciate that overview. So just kind of opening it up for any questions that anyone has for Larry before we send him on his way.
Yeah, I have a question.
Please, Bev.
What is the salary range for the position?
Okay, great question. Thank you. I've got the paperwork in front of me here as I sit on the bench here, and I don't know if it's a part of our job description, and if it's not, and you would have it. Is it
will when it's posted. I don't know if the draft is out have it yet. They may still be talking about it.
Of course, we've got the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act, and we'll be posting a range, but I don't see it on the paper here that I'm looking at. So we'll share that out as part of the follow-up. Okay. And I'll share out what becomes the final job description with your inputs and describe to you the range of compensation.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thanks, Bev.
Alan,
yes, Alan.
Where do you think it'll be best that you're going to post this? Are you going to the universities? Are you trying to keep it in metro area?
Let's see. This will be a national search, so we we'll be posting this on national outlets, certainly through our various government job postings and equity councils that I'm aware of in terms of getting this as much exposure as possible. We do have some funds available to post this in some national publications and journals, electronic, of course. But if anybody has any input, I'd welcome those as well, along with your suggestions on the job description. We want to be sure and get as much exposure as possible, and we would entertain candidates from anywhere across the country.
Thanks for that question, Alan. Rich, I see your hand virtually.
Yeah, thanks, Justin, and thank you, Larry. Reading through this, it appears to be primarily for internal training and processes. And my question was, how do we then relate to dealing with members of the community?
Thanks. So you're absolutely correct, Rich. Just to be real direct in answering your question, we see this as probably our first step in this direction, and yet I think there'll be a lot of outreach potentially for this after the initial assessment is addressed and an initial action plan internally on our various processes. I think there's then an opportunity with a proof of the concept to pivot and have some external attention, either from this position or perhaps some subsequent resources to follow. But you're thinking big picture and down the road for the moment. This addresses our processes internally.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, any other questions? Okay, so my recommendation, I don't think there needs to be a motion on this, but my recommendation would be that we maybe take some time, look over the posting, provide any feedback, and let's see if we could get feedback. Larry, would, by the end of maybe like by Friday afternoon, would that be good for you as far as posting feedback? Would that be okay in a timely manner?
I'd like to allow the weekend as well. So could we say maybe 8 o'clock Monday morning? That way, I know folks are attending to their business and may enjoy those extra couple of days. And to provide that feedback directly to me, we'll assimilate those and input what we can. And then I'll share out with you what gets posted, and I'll share out with you with the links as well, so you can help us promote the vacancy and the recruitment.
All right, that sounds good. So in our follow-up minutes, Seth, we could just make sure that any feedback, let's send it over to myself, Cody, and Kate by 8 o'clock Monday morning. And we'll go through that and try to organize it, and we'll send it on to you, Larry.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your help in this. And again, looking for your service as well in our upcoming interview panels, and we'll go from there. And I look forward to introducing the candidate as soon as we've made our choice.
Great. We appreciate you involving us in this process. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Good night, everyone. Thanks for letting me join you and take this from the top. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and so Cody and I had spoken a little bit and talked about them inviting, at this point it would be me to go in and be a part of that process. So definitely would be interested once that rolls underway. We would, I'd want your feedback about what qualities we'd be looking for in this candidate, what questions we might really have to frame. I know that, for those of you who live in the hiring manager world, there's a sort of a construct of limitations legally that hiring managers are allowed to do around questioning and things. That being said, I think we can hit the ground running with what we would hope would be the ideal candidate and the qualifications of that position. So I think it's an exciting opportunity to help kind of refine this process and really bring in something that I know we all are very passionate about into the city. Okay, and we'll have more discussion on that, I'm sure, in the coming weeks. As we get updates and as I get updates, I will submit those via email, so we're not waiting necessarily. And we may have an optional meeting if it's a matter of time. I'm not sure what the time frame is. Cody, do you have a time frame of when, once they post it, what's the typical time frame of?
It's usually at least 2 to 3 weeks. So
Okay.
I think they're trying to post it Monday or Tuesday next week. And then that would be end of August would be when they would have a candidate pool.
Okay, great. So
If
I
you
would.
have suggestions on, sorry, Justin, if there's suggestions also on where to post it, please send those too. I'm going to send everybody an email right now just describing this so everybody has a place to send it back to. If you have locations or any suggestions to the job description, please let us know. I should also explain that there is a section in all city job descriptions that is about spirit values, and it pertains to every position in the entire organization, and there is no space to change that. It is a consistent from me to Laura to whoever's doing utility billing to the guys mowing the lawns. Everybody has the same set about those. So just know we've heard that they're very long, but they're really important to us. So those things will likely not be changed. But
Great. As we get more information, I'll probably try to convene just a separate meeting for anyone that wants to join, and we can talk through what maybe you would like to see in the qualities of those things. We can always collect a list as well, but I sometimes think it's nice to talk through some of those concepts because we want to make sure that we're all on the same page, if you will. Great. Thank you, Cody. Thank you all. Moving on, Michelle is graciously facilitating our next guest. So Michelle, I'll give it to you to introduce.
Great, perfect. I'll have Victoria. There she is. As most of you all know, I do work down at the state capitol, and this past session, Representative Tatone ran a bill that we were fortunate enough to work with the IRC on. It was my first opportunity to learn a little bit about the refugee and asylee sort of world. And I realized I knew pretty much nothing going into preparation for this bill. And I thought it'd be really great for the rest of the group to have a little bit of just sort of an overview on the process itself, what IRC does, and potentially be sort of a way for us to think about how we can best support members of our community who are refugees or asylees, because they are often invisible, for lack of a better word to use. They're folks that we don't necessarily, know. They don't necessarily come into our little spheres. So I thought it'd be great to have Victoria do a quick presentation, and hopefully that'll spur some conversation on our end, how we can best support those community members. So I'm going to ask, actually, Victoria, I think do you have like a presentation to put up, or will you just be speaking?
If I do have
so
if it's okay to share my screen.
Yeah, so let's have Kate, if you can hear me, can you give her screen sharing capability?
Absolutely, I'm working on it right now.
Perfect, I appreciate that.
Can you remind me how much time I have?
Well, I think we allotted, actually, Justin, did we adjust the amount of time that Victoria has to speak?
15, 20 minutes. We have somewhere around.
15, 20 minutes. We could probably do that.
Victoria, we can be certainly flexible. I'd say around 20 minutes, and sometimes, of course, presentations lend themselves to questioning, so that takes a little bit longer. So if take into that account, we are fine with whatever you can give us.
Wonderful, Victoria. You should be ready to go. Okay, let me go ahead
And actually, Victoria's volume is a little low. Is that on our end, or?
It might be on me, and I can speak a little bit louder. Is that better?
Yeah, you'll have to speak fairly loud. It's quite low.
Okay.
Let me see. We can also turn up our volume a little bit. Wait, is that it? No, it's different.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, we're going to turn up our volume on our end a little bit. There we go. Perfect.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Victoria Francis. I'm the Senior Advocacy Officer for the International Rescue Committee in Denver. The IRC is one of 3 refugee resettlement agencies in Colorado, and we contract with the U.S. State Department to welcome refugees through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. We've also been working to welcome Afghans and Ukrainians who've been coming to the U.S. For a very long time, but more frequently in the last year or so. So today I just want to share a little bit about refugee resettlement in Colorado with all of you, and how cities have been supportive and things that we've seen work in other communities. Just quickly to provide a little bit of context about who we are, the IRC was originally founded in 1933 at the request of Albert Einstein, and since then has continued to help individuals impacted by war, violence, persecution, natural disasters, famine, and other humanitarian crises. Currently, the IRC works in about 40 different countries providing humanitarian aid, and then we work in 28 U.S. cities providing refugee resettlement and immigration integration services. As far as who we serve, the majority of clients that we serve at the IRC in Denver, as well as the other 2 resettlement agencies in Colorado, are individuals who come to the U.S. as refugees. A refugee is a person who is forced to leave their home country and cannot safely return due to a legitimate fear of persecution based on their race, religion, nationality, political activity, or membership in a certain social group. Resettlement agencies can also serve many other immigrant community members. We serve Cuban and Haitian entrants, survivors of trafficking, survivors of torture, and Amerasians. These populations are considered refugee eligible under the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. Also considered refugee eligible are special immigrant visa recipients, or SIVs. These are usually individuals who were employed by the U.S. military or on behalf of the U.S. government in either Iraq or Afghanistan. A lot of times they served as interpreters And often because of their service to the U.S. military, their lives are at risk. And so this visa program allows them to safely resettle into the U.S. And then another group of individuals that had been mentioned previously that Michelle had mentioned are asylees and asylum seekers. So individuals who have been granted asylum in the U.S. are called asylees, and these individuals are also eligible for services under the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. Essentially, the difference between an asylee and a refugee is where their status is determined. For refugees, their status is determined overseas before traveling to the U.S., whereas an asylee goes through a similar process, but they do so after coming to the U.S. So it might be an individual who presented themselves at a port of entry, at the U.S. border. It might be someone who's already here on a student or a work visa. And then if they are also able to prove that they have a legitimate fear of persecution, if they return home based on their race, religion, nationality, political affiliation, or membership in a certain social group, they can be granted protection similar to that of refugees. But more recently, we've been serving a large number of individuals who've been allowed to come to the U.S. under what's called humanitarian parole. Many of the Afghans and Ukrainians who've been coming to Colorado and to the U.S. recently have been granted humanitarian parole. This is a temporary status that allows these individuals to lawfully stay in the U.S. and work in the U.S. But turning back to refugees and how they come to the U.S., once an individual has left their home country, they've crossed an international border into a second country and declared themselves to the United Nations. The United Nations then determines whether or not someone meets the criteria for refugee status. So they do assessment and say, yes or no, you have a legitimate claim to refugee status. Once that status is determined, the United Nations then considers what we call 3 durable solutions for refugees. The first one is voluntary repatriation. So does it become safe for someone to return to their home country? Of course, this is ideal. Most people want to be able to return to their home country. Unfortunately, this isn't always a viable option. We see places, Syria, for example, Sudan, Somalia, where conflict has been going on for years, if not decades, and it's not a safe option for people to return home. The second durable solution considered for refugees is what's called local integration. So essentially, does the host country where you fled to let you stay there legally, let you work there legally, let you start to rebuild your life, send your children to school, all those types of things? And then the third option considered is what we call third country resettlement. So resettlement into a country like the US. So once an individual has been given their refugee status by the United Nations, and the United Nations has determined that third country resettlement is the best option for them, they then refer that family or individual to a resettlement country. Refugees cannot pick the country they're referred to, they're just referred to a country. If that country does happen to be the US would then conduct its own vigorous screening and vetting process. A referral to the US resettlement program is no guarantee that someone will be admitted. The US literally goes through and handpicks the individuals it will admit through this process. Security screenings are intense and they're led by US government authorities, including the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Defense, and multiple other security agencies. The process usually takes anywhere from 24 to 36 months, and it's followed by additional security checks once individuals or family arrives in the US. But once the U.S. government does determine that someone will be welcomed to the country as a refugee, they are referred to one of 9 national resettlement agencies, which the IRC is one of, who then have smaller offices or affiliates throughout the country, who then take on the role when someone actually lands here in the U.S. Quickly returning to Afghans and Ukrainians. Individuals from Afghanistan and Ukraine have been coming to the U.S. and to Colorado for years through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program we just talked about. For several years, in fact, Afghans have been the top incoming population into Colorado, both as refugees and through the SIV program. And last year, Ukrainians were the 3rd top population coming to Colorado as refugees. There were about 270 Ukrainian individuals who came through the U.S. refugee program and resettled in Colorado over the last decade. About 78 of them have been in the last 2 years. So Colorado has a long history of welcoming these individuals. It's just looked slightly different in the last year. And so kind of to go through what that has looked like, more concentrated in the last year or so. For Afghans, we just are passing the 1-year anniversary of the fall of Kabul, and the U.S. has coordinated evacuations of individuals out of Afghanistan who were then transported to international military bases or U.S. military bases outside of the country. They were then transferred to U.S. military bases in the U.S. where they were processed before being connected with resettlement agencies like the IRC. For Ukrainians, there hasn't been a similar process as far as there have not been flights or evacuations coordinated by the U.S. to bring people to the U.S. like there were with Afghans. But what we have seen is Ukrainians, what we would say like self-book to the U.S., paying for their own flights, coming to the airport. We've seen a significant number of Ukrainians at the southern border asking for protection or asylum. And now the United States has set out a program called Uniting for Ukraine that partners Ukrainians with U.S. sponsors. And so those are some of the ways that we're seeing Ukrainians come to the U.S. Looking back at refugee population specifically in Colorado, Colorado typically welcomes about 1 to 2% of the national number of refugees who come to the U.S. On average, that has meant right around 1,500 individuals to the state of Colorado total. So not a lot. The last 3 or 4 years, it's been quite lower than that, under 500 most years. 80% of refugees who initially come to Colorado are resettled in the Denver metro area. The reason for that is the 3 resettlement agencies all have offices in Denver, the IRC, African Community Center, and Lutheran Family Services. Lutheran Family Services also resettles out of the Greeley-Fort Morgan area as well as Colorado Springs. So we do see smaller numbers of refugees going to those areas. But ultimately, we end up seeing refugees all over the state. Refugees come with legal status. They in theory could move here, say thanks and no thanks. I want to be in a different state or a different city. So we see people moving all over the state of Colorado for job opportunities, to be closer to family, or maybe they just like one area of the state more than another. So this only really reflects what we see initially. As far as the number of refugees in general that are admitted to the U.S. each year, that's set by a presidential determination before the start of the new federal fiscal year. So we're coming up upon that. So sometime usually before the end of September, the president will come out after consultation with Congress and say, during the upcoming federal fiscal year, we will admit up to so many refugees. That number, that presidential determination or refugee ceiling as it's often referred to, includes geographic caps. So it might say from East Africa, we'll welcome 10,000 refugees. From the Middle East, 5,000 refugees. So that consultative process really allows Congress, experts at embassies around the world to really weigh in on where the global need is and who we should be resettling into the U.S. The average presidential determination since the Refugee Act of 1980, which really codified the way the U.S. resettles refugees, has been about 95,000 individuals. This year so far, during federal fiscal year 2022, Colorado has welcomed 405 refugees from about 24 different countries. This is in addition to the approximately 2,215 Afghans we've welcomed in the past year. Again, we've continued to see Ukrainians, but it's been in much smaller numbers. We've seen increased Ukrainian arrivals as the United for Ukraine program has been set up and continues to be operationalized. But a lot of the places where you're seeing large Ukrainian numbers are in cities and states where there's existing Ukrainian populations. So Seattle and Portland has seen a fair number of Ukrainian arrivals. Colorado, we just haven't seen very large numbers, whereas with Afghans, a lot of Afghans ended up in Colorado because we have a pretty significant Afghan population already. So we saw a lot of family reunification cases. I won't go through this whole slide. I know it's a lot of information, but I did want to provide a little bit of overview about services that are provided to refugees and these other populations we've talked about through a refugee resettlement agency like the IRC. So I'd like to note that all resettlement agencies provide essentially the same services within the first 90 days a refugee arrives in the U.S. We have these contracts with the U.S. State Department that says there are certain services as a resettlement agency we are obligated to provide. Outside of that, resettlement agencies and resettlement communities create programs that are really reflective of the communities that they serve. We raise private funds and apply for grants so that we could supplement the services that are funded through the U.S. government to make sure that we're really supporting people as they become self-sufficient. And so just to kind of go over a couple of these, resettlement agency staff are responsible for picking people up at the airport when they arrive, for securing housing. We don't sign leases on behalf of clients, but we do help to secure the housing. So a lot of times that means creating strong relationships with landlords or property management companies so that we can secure housing, that they know who we are, that the resettlement agency will be there to help the client along the way. Even though we're not the one who is signing the lease, helping landlords to understand why our clients don't have a U.S. rental history and they can't pull a U.S. credit score, and just being the kind of the bridge between landlords and newly arrived clients. We help families enroll their children in school, get their social security cards, qualify or access any benefits they qualify for, enroll in English language classes. All clients are required to go through cultural orientation classes, which is basically a 5-day crash course in American customs and norms and U.S. laws and all those things you might need if you are new to a community. Resettlement agencies also provide clients with job readiness services where they help individuals to understand the U.S. Employment landscape. What are the customs and norms? What are your rights as an employee? How do you apply for a job in the U.S.? How might that be different than your home country? What is the process of going through an interview and updating your resume for the U.S. context? And making sure those things that we all take for granted because we're already existing in this ecosystem, and making sure people are prepared to enter that. Helping our clients find jobs in the U.S. that align with their skills and education. A lot of times we see clients struggling to re-credential in the U.S. because their skills and training isn't recognized, or their license they might have held previously aren't easily recognized in the U.S. context, so helping people to navigate that system. We also help clients, we provide immigration legal services to help individuals apply for family reunification. Refugees are required to adjust their status from being a refugee to a lawfully present resident at 1 year. We help them through that process. Applying for citizenship, we also have as Michelle had mentioned, a program dedicated to serving survivors of torture in our community, excuse me. A lot of those services are tailored case management and mental health services. A lot of our survivors of torture in Colorado are also asylum seekers, so they're individuals who have filed for asylum and are going through the process of having their cases adjudicated. We also offer youth programs, financial literacy and coaching. We do lending programs through our office. So we help individuals establish a U.S. credit score so they can then move on to other opportunities as they rebuild their lives there. We have psychosocial support programs, including a community garden. So really a whole variety of services to help with individuals meet their initial survival needs, but also focus on long-term integration. Resettlement agencies are able to serve refugees for up to 5 years after they arrive. So as you interact with community members or your residents, and you come across someone who identifies as a refugee or who you might think is a refugee, I always tell people you can always refer them back to their resettlement agency to get reconnected with services. It might not mean financial support, but at year 4, someone could come back to us and receive employment services if they were looking for a job upgrade or making a career change, or they needed help getting their kids enrolled in school. And so it's a service we're able to provide with people long term to make sure that there's those opportunities for them to really get established in their new community. But really the goal of resettlement is to help support individuals as they restart their lives and become self-sufficient. For a lot of our clients, this means becoming a U.S. citizen, buying a home, starting a business, returning to college or starting college, buying a house. So it's really incredible to get to see clients do those types of things. Turning to how cities can help, we've seen cities work to welcome newcomers in a variety of ways. So I have just a few examples that we've seen as kind of best practices across the U.S. The first one has been online resources or resource hubs where community members can go to learn about who refugees are and who other immigrant newcomers are. Why are they coming to their community? What supports will be available to them, and how can community members also help to support them? We've seen a lot of this, especially in response to increased Afghan arrivals, for communities to really understand what was the process Afghans were coming through. If they encountered someone, you know, at a school event or in their community, how could they help to make sure that those individuals are connected to services if they're not already connected? Similarly, for new arrivals, seeing this information on a city website is extremely beneficial. It shows them that their city welcomes them and is, wants them to succeed. It also helps people to really navigate the different services and understand how they can be involved in their community, how they can go to events and take advantage of the resources and activities that anyone living in a community might want to take advantage of. This one is slightly similar. And again, another community resource, but providing them in accessible languages. So we've seen some cities post videos in case there are community members who maybe are illiterate or don't have good reading and writing skills, that they could watch a video in their native language to understand different city services. Providing frequently accessed city documents in languages that are accessible for, you know, the majority of speakers in your community. So maybe the top 3 languages in your community, just being responsive of those needs and making sure that individuals, regardless of their language ability, are able to access different city resources. For our clients, we see that they really appreciate this. Not only does it make them feel welcome, but it's kind of an invitation to them to be to contribute and participate in their community, to sign up for the rec center, to take their kids to a park, to access different resources at the library. It's really beneficial that they can start to learn about those types of things. Another way we've seen cities help is by prioritizing refugees, or in the case of the city of Wichita in Kansas, they prioritized Afghans, newly arrived Afghans, for Section 8 or housing choice vouchers. So the city council voted to prioritize those individuals. We also saw the city of Wichita provide bus passes or transportation vouchers for newly arrived Afghans in their community. It really served as a great way for newcomers to get out in their community, to utilize public transportation, to get around the city and really start to acclimate themselves to being in the community. We've also seen a variety of different support from cities that might include a city fund that helps offset the cost of applying for citizenship for individuals who have been here for 5 years and are ready to apply for citizenship, or increased resources at library that explain to people the process of naturalizing. A lot of times individuals just might not be aware of the process they need to go through, so making sure that at city offices and buildings that those resources are available that help direct people to naturalizing. It's really good economically for cities when individuals naturalize. It's economically good for the individual. It really benefits everyone when people have the opportunity to naturalize. We've also seen grants to resettlement agencies for things like emergency housing assistance. So refugees becoming employed quite quickly here in Colorado, usually in less than 90 days. But as we all know, things happen. And so maybe there's a medical bill or something that comes up. Emergency housing or emergency funds in general are always beneficial. We've seen an increase in interest around funding for immigration legal services, especially as it relates to Afghans. Absent federal legislation like an Afghan Adjustment Act, all of the Afghans who were paroled into the U.S. will need to apply for asylum. If the Afghan Adjustment Act passes at the federal level, those individuals will be able to go from being humanitarian parolees to lawfully permanent residents, so a similar process as to what refugees go through. But absent that federal action, all these 2,000 plus Afghans in Colorado will need to apply for asylum, and unfortunately our systems are already backlogged, and so just making sure people have the support to go through that process. We've seen things like grants for youth program, or making sure that newcomers have scholarships or access to summer camp or different after school activities for their children. And then anything that increases access to English language resources. In Colorado, all refugee eligible populations can access free ESL resources for up to 5 years after they arrive here in Colorado. Emily Griffith Technical College, for example, Jeffco Family Literacy, and there's one other organization that I can't think of, but they are funded to provide free ESL resources to refugees for up to 5 years after they arrive in the US. But oftentimes we see communities creating their own English language coffee hours, or informal meetups, and just opportunities for community groups to come together and practice their English language skills. And then support for digital literacy, whether that be devices, discounts on Wi-Fi access, courses at the local library in multiple language that helps people to really familiarize themselves with different digital devices, and making sure everyone has those digital literacy skills can go a really long way to benefit newcomer communities and make sure that they're able to fully integrate into our cities. And then I just have a couple more suggestions if you bear with me. One thing that we see that's incredibly powerful is proclamations of welcome. So cities deciding to pass a proclamation that says they are a welcoming community where refugees and immigrants are welcome. Celebrations of World Refugee Day, which is June 20th every year, where cities will say we're honoring refugees in our community and around the world by proclaiming June 20th is World Refugee Day. That's incredibly impactful. It shows the welcoming community and the newcomers alike that their community is welcoming and is invested in their success. We would also encourage you to set up a meet and greet for immigrant and refugee community members living in your city to learn more about them, for them to have the opportunity to learn more about city government, how they can be involved, and what that might look like for them. Sorry, I lost where I was in my notes. Connecting with a resettlement agency. So we would always invite you to come to our office and meet with our staff, meet with our clients, observe some of our programs. I recently had the chance to sit in on a cultural orientation class, and the day I was there, they were going over rules and norms around school enrollment in the US, you know, homework for your kids. They talked about the US Postal Service, which was overwhelming when you have to talk to someone and try to explain junk mail and all the things that might come your way. But then they were talking about money, and I discovered that there was a $50 coin that I wasn't familiar with. So it's really incredible to see the amount of learning that people have to go through when they first come here, just to kind of be level set and really understand how to navigate their community. But we would always welcome any of you to come to our office and visit with us. Housing and employment connections are always extremely beneficial, whether that be with a landlord or a property manager who's interested in learning more about renting to refugee community members and their relationship with the resettlement agency and what that might look like, or employers who are interested in learning more. Sometimes it can be, you know, employers with Afghans, for example, they had work authorization, but sometimes the work authorization paperwork that employers were familiar with wasn't the same way that Afghans were being processed, because the stamps look different in the passports, and just things like that can be nuanced and confusing to people. If there's ever any connections we can make to help people learn more, or make sure that we're getting employees connected with employers who need employees, and our clients into meaningful work opportunities, all the better. And then lastly, donation drives and volunteer opportunities. If you have community members who are reaching out to see what they could do, you're always welcome to connect them with the IRC or other resettlement agencies. We always have a lot of in-kind donation needs. Part of our requirements as a resettlement agency is that an individual's home has a full set of items in it when they arrive. So we have a list, you know, it's 1 fork, 1 spoon, 1 plate per person, towels for every individual. It's quite basic, but we are required to provide all of those items for individuals when they arrive, and we rely very heavily on community donations to fulfill that. We also are always looking for volunteers. We have intern programs. We have a really great family mentor program where community members serve as kind of a first friend to a newly arrived individual or family for about 6 months, helping them learn to navigate their community. We have employment mentors. We have volunteers at our community farms. Just a whole host of opportunities for community members to be involved. And for all of you, if it would be a good group volunteer opportunity, we would love to connect and see what something like that might look like. And then lastly, I'm sorry, I did have one more thing. There is currently a local elected officials sign-on letter going around for the upcoming presidential determination. The letter asks the Biden administration to rebuild the U.S. refugee admissions program and make sure it's adequately funded to continue to support newly arrived refugees and refugees already in our community. It's a bipartisan, unbranded letter, but it's a great way for communities to really come out and show their support and show that they're welcoming of newcomers. But with that, I'll go ahead and close out, but I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any additional information that would be helpful. I am waiting, and I follow up with this information for Michelle to get kind of a breakdown of how many refugees are estimated to live in your city at this time. Our data team was not quite there with getting me the updated information today, so I can follow up with that soon to kind of give you an idea of how many people have chosen to make Westminster their home.
Perfect. Yes.
Real quick, and I apologize, I have to dip out, but would you be willing to share the slide deck as well as information on the letter you spoke of? I'd like to be able to look it over and share it with the rest of council.
I'd be happy to.
Cool. I appreciate that presentation. You guys have a
Appreciate
good
you
rest of your
asking
meeting.
that. Thank you.
I sent some notes to Justin for some other things.
Excellent.
Yeah. Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. Victoria, thank you so much. One of the questions I might have is, and you may have mentioned this, I had a little bit of a technical issue, but maybe what are some current, what you would designate successful city partnership models? So like, are there cities in the Denver area that you feel like have really navigated a strong partnership with you? Are there models, and you've given us suggestions, but there are models that maybe we should be reaching out for and seeking out as we start thinking about a potential partnership with you?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'll follow up with our team to get a little bit more specific information, but I know we've done things like welcome the police department into our cultural orientation, so they have an opportunity to meet our clients. Our clients have an opportunity to meet with the police officers. A lot of times our clients come from backgrounds where there hasn't historically been trust with the police, so it's a really great opportunity for them to build that here. We've had opportunities. There's a couple of cities who do kind of a city academy program, which has been really great when we could have middle school kids go and learn about their community. We've seen things like welcome packets in common languages. So for a lot of our Afghan arrivals, for example, many of them speak Dari and Pashto in addition to English, as many of them were interpreters. And so cities have kind of put together a welcome packet, and I could share a copy of what something like that looks like, where it says, these are the trash services, or these are the different utility providers, or anything that might be relevant that you might want someone who just moved into your city to know. Here are the different rec centers in your neighborhood and public areas, and just providing that information. But I could put all of that together and share with Michelle if that would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Seth, please.
Are you aware of anything where Westminster is particularly doing a good job, or anything that is particularly lacking in Westminster?
I'm not, but I will get more information. I'll ask. We don't hear any complaints if that's helpful, but I'll follow up and get more information.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great question. Thank you. Other questions for Victoria? It's definitely great work, and certainly, I mean, just looking at the presentation, I know I got cut out a little bit, but it's aligned to, of course, what, you know, I feel like our core values are. So I'd definitely be interested as you get more information to Michelle, Victoria, and kind of navigating. I know there are some ideas, and we've talked a little bit, and some of you on the board remember when we did like, I think it was kind of like a lunch thing down in Irving or Urban Street Library or somewhere where, yeah, Bev, you would remember this.
That was part of the Welcoming America effort. And are we still a member of that, or what are we doing with that? Nothing? Oh.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's some opportunities to maybe fill in some gaps of where I think maybe we could identify with a little bit of background research on our end from the city. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, please,
Alan,
yeah,
sorry.
I was gonna say, please keep in touch. You know, we've seen language access policies being developed at the city level where cities have kind of dug in to make sure review of their language access policy. I'll send all of that over. Anything we can do to provide research or resources, we're happy to do.
Thank you so much. Alan, I saw your hand. Sorry, thank you.
Do you rely on a lot of faith-based? I noticed you had Lutheran Family Services, and I'm quite familiar with them over the years. Great organization. And I know that they work with other faith-based groups for that. So do you rely on that a lot?
Yeah, our faith communities are huge in this work, whether that be as volunteers, in-kind donations. There's a church group in Denver who every year they do a donation drive for us that gets us some of our highest need items that we don't typically get donated. And they set up donation sites at churches all over the state of Colorado and collect donations for resettlement. We receive a lot of grant funding through faith-based organizations that have grant programs. So resettlement is really considered a public-private partnership. You know, we're federally funded. There is a Colorado state office that coordinates refugee services, but we don't receive any fundings from the state of Colorado. It's all pass-through funds, federal funds. And then outside of those core resettlement services, so if we want to have youth programs or mental health programs, those are funds that we source on our own through private donations and grants in the community. And our faith-based community has really been centered to that. This last year, especially during COVID, we had a Muslim youth group who was incredible in helping to provide ongoing mentor opportunities for families remotely. So it's really groups we couldn't do our work without.
And one other thing, if you are federally funded, how do you walk that line dealing with the feds?
That's a great question. When you're receiving federal dollars and you also have some things you'd like to advocate about, you know, I think a lot of it comes from being very client-centered and saying these are the needs of our clients. We need more funding because better services for our clients is better outcomes for our clients and for the communities that choose to welcome them. But I think it's something we are always every day kind of navigating to pushing for protections for our clients and for vulnerable communities, and holding people accountable while also recognizing that we're very much funded as a U.S. federal program. So if you have any tips, you know, we're always happy to take those as well, how to best navigate that.
Great. Thanks, Victoria. Doug, please.
Along with working with faith-based communities, it seems like there could be a big opportunity to work with neighborhood-based. I'm thinking like the fish, our neighborhood holds a big campaign for fish every year. And I wonder, do you do anything like that, working with neighborhoods to try to fulfill some of your needs?
That's a great question. I don't know that that's something we've done proactively. It's probably been more when those groups have come to us seeking out opportunities where we've had neighborhood organizations saying we want to do a fundraiser or we want to do a donation collection. But I'm not necessarily that we've been as proactive about that. So that's a really great opportunity. I don't know that we've really capitalized on that.
Great question. Thank you, Doug. And thank you, Ellen, for your previous question. Other questions? Okay. Oh, yes, Donna, I see your hand.
This question is kind of for you, Justin. What are the school districts doing to work with these kind of organizations? Can you give some background about that?
Well, I could certainly find out additional information. I do know, Donna, that, you know, as a principal, I mean, in my own experience, I know that we've worked directly with ensuring that, you know, families who are refugees, you know, are welcome and included, and that falls under, I believe, Title IX, Title 10. You know, they kind of, there's an umbrella that federal law and guidance gives us, but I can get more information about how we're actively working, at least currently, especially in context to today's standards, around that. So I can get more information for sure.
Thank you.
And I could also share some of the best practices that we've seen. I know our staff, of course, has school districts that are easier to work with, or some that maybe aren't as familiar with working with refugee students. So there's a level of education we have to provide. A lot of times it's around making sure kids are enrolled in the correct grade, and issues with transcripts. But I'm also happy to kind of source our team and share some kind of best practices that we've seen as well.
Yep, that would be great.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to send some of that information to Michelle, and we can kind of break that out, then I can go to not only our school district, the one that I work with, but the surrounding school districts, and really, to Donna's point, inventory kind of what the processes are, and maybe what implications there are for supporting that as well.
That'd be great.
Okay, excellent. Well, I don't see any other hands. Victoria, thank you so much for your time in this important work. We appreciate it. Thank you, Michelle, for facilitating this meeting with Victoria, and we definitely look forward to working with you and hearing from you in the future.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you again for having me, and have a wonderful night.
You as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, friends, moving on to old business up on the agenda. I know we kind of shifted things around a little bit. We have under old business, review and approve the previous meeting minutes. So do we have anyone that is willing to step up and make a motion?
So moved.
All right, Doug is motioned. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. I'll let you one. I saw like 4 hands. Thank you. All right. It's been motioned and seconded to approve the meeting minutes from July. Is there any discussion? Okay. Hearing no discussion points, let's go ahead and get a vote. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes for July 2022?
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Okay, so moved and passed. Thank you very much, all. Our next agenda item, want to talk a little bit about our attendance policy. We do want to talk a little bit, you know, obviously I know I've had a couple of absences. Thank you for your patience. Michelle stepped up beautifully though and shown you what real leaders can do. So thanks, Michelle, for doing that. But we do have a policy that does guide us for our bylaws. So one of the things that we are going to ask and really reiterate is, you know, if you're going to be absent, we understand this is a voluntary position. You all are so busy. We're networking and everything. We get that. And we're always going to assume best intent, but we do want to make sure that we're following a process. You know, especially with the pandemic, it was a little easy to kind of get sidetracked, but, you know, we were noting quite a few absences with a few people. And in my mind, it's almost a precursor. You can almost determine, okay, we kind of understand, or you can kind of see how long a board member might last. There is a correlation between attendance and, you know, actual follow through of board duties. We don't want to keep on being a turnover board. I think we've done a great job in the past several months, kind of stopping that. For a while. It felt like we were always inviting new people in. But that being said, we did have one member who we haven't heard from in a while. So we're going to make the formal motion to have Megan Peters, I think, and this will be with council approval, move into a regular position. She's currently an alternate now. Cody, if I'm misspeaking, let me know. And then I believe Cody.
To be approved by the council, she'll technically need to be approved by the council at the next meeting, and then the alternate, there's someone on the waiting list, so Abby's working on that, and then also below me to be.
Yeah, but as you all know, there is no, every alternate who's ever served has always been able to vote because we've always had attendance visas. So, and we get it, we're a busy board, but we do want to kind of look at that. I will, just so you're aware moving forward, and I'll work a little bit with you, Michelle and Seth, and we'll just kind of navigate like how we can support if there's emergencies or things like that. Of course, you take care of yourself first. That being said, we just want to make sure we follow a process that we don't like get so distant or siloed that we don't know what's going on with a board member and we don't know if they're a part of us or not. That being said, I know that Miguel is serving in his duty on the police advisory board this evening, so I know he could not attend with us tonight. So those things, of course, are completely understood. Questions on that? Okay, and what will happen is we'll kind of look at that process, and I'll make sure to maybe do a personal contact with any board member that we feel like, okay, well, if there's attendance, we haven't heard from you in like a meeting or two, we definitely need to reach out to see, so we can be a little bit more timely in making the decisions that we need to make to move forward in our work. Okay, thank you, friends. Moving on, I do have a few notes from Mayor Pro Tem DeMott. I know he hung on there as long as he could. He did send me some notes, so I'll go through these notes, of course, with very little context on how to have any follow-up conversation. But if you have questions as they come up, let me know. Oh, yes, Seth, please.
I just wanted to note that last month we had very full attendance, and the only people that were not here last month were you and Doug, who are both here this month.
Yay, great. So, see, yeah, good example. Yeah, and the attendance actually has been really strong, I think, overall, especially recently. But there have been a few friends. And the other thing that I really wanted to talk about, and I want to talk to Cody, is, how are we doing exit interviews? Are these people not wanting to be a part of the board because of a certain reason? Is there something I need to do? And I've talked a little bit to Cody, and I'll run this by you, Michelle. I'd like to maybe meet with you a little bit about how we can do some more personalized outreach to ensure that all board voices are heard and they feel very valued. So I'll take that as a kind of a personal piece. So thanks, Seth. Appreciate that. Okay, so from Mayor Pro Tem DeMott, Westminster has selected Mark, is it Freitag or Freitag? Freitag as the finalist for city manager vote. And that's going to be up for approval on August 22nd with a contract for employment by the council. So that was the first item of business. On Monday, August 15th, there's a move to a special meeting will be held to approve contract to abate and clean up debris on site on Knox Court due to the explosion. I know that was big news there. This will allow process to proceed once permit is approved to avoid additional delays in order to move as fast as we safely and legally can. So that was just something of an update there. Now we know that that was associated, of course, there was, some tragedy and loss there, but I know the city is trying to move forward to try to clean that up. And then final note, this last Saturday, council met to conduct their budget retreat and provided feedback on the first draft of information of the budget for 2023. And they provided feedback, and Mayor Pro Tem DeMott says more to come on that. So those were the 3 points that he had sent to me. Any questions that I can't answer? You have plenty of questions.
If you have them, I can try to help if you have them. I also attend all of their meetings. Not all of them. A few I don't. Yes. Executive sessions.
All right. Any questions on those pieces? Okay, great. Moving forward to new business, and I want to bring this from Alan's perspective. Alan, thank you. Alan, I know, has been talking a little bit about like really wanting to frame some discussion around, what resources is Westminster or our city, what resources are we able to provide for families who may be displaced or who are mobile or currently houseless or homeless. So what we wanted to do is just talk a little bit, and Alan and I kind of talked a little bit offline, well, online, but offline of this meeting, and, felt like this was an important point that, maybe thinking about how we could move a subcommittee into the works. We do know that this issue is, socioeconomics challenge more and more people every day. We know the housing crisis is playing a factor. We know that the limited inventory is playing a factor for, I know Rich's work. I know Bev, you've worked in this for the, affordable housing that we've, really talked through. And I know you've been on groups for. So Alan, I'll open it up to you to just talk a little bit about framing what your thinking is. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you. What my thinking is, so quick background, for the last 2.25 years here in Westminster and in unincorporated Adams, and a little bit in unincorporated Jeffco, I do weekly street outreach. So I'm on the ground with the people who are out there. And sometimes I think I want to cry, but I can't, and I won't. It's a difficult situation out there. Many of the people are ex-felons, so they have unique challenges into getting work. There is a stigma attached to them. And 20 years ago, I was like most people. It's like, keep the bum away from me, or let's get rid of them. But coming to know the people and to see them and to talk with them and to understand, the majority also appear to be drug or alcohol users. We don't really have programs to. The city says we do, the county says we do, every city around, everybody is siloed. But I spoke 2 weeks ago, and when I did not intend to want to speak, but the city has what I call, it's kind of a cruel whack-a-mole way of doing things. A neighborhood complains, and eventually the city will send in park rangers, depending on the property, or the police for abatement. Some people get trespass notices. That creates a whole new set of problems.
Alan, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yes.
Because they do more than that. They don't just walk into the neighborhood. The first thing that happens is, depending on the property and who owns it, whether it's a city or a private entity, or it's like city, like Public Works, or city versus park, first thing they do is send in a navigator to help give resources and provide services and connect them with resources. So it's not a immediate just you're out.
And that's what I understand. Okay. And I see that on there. That's correct. But it's still, once an abatement does occur, once trespassing notices are put up, the majority of these folks wait until the very last minute, until an officer shows up and says, you got to move now, or at an officer's discretion, they may say, I'll give you another day. But it's still, so we move them from one community to the other. And the way I view this,
I'm just telling you from the policy and procedural places. I know.
And I sent this all to you.
Yeah.
And the policy.
And I was on the committee that had to go through all of that. So I have a little bit more than just what's on that piece of paper. But there are huge limitations. We also have a board of 7 members who have given this direction. So I'm not trying to deter the conversation, redirect it. I just want to make sure that you also know that they are doing what as compassionately as they humanly can as a staff to be human-centric, while also appeasing the elected body, or not appeasing, but taking the directive, because that is what we have to do in this organization.
Correct.
So there's also a study session on September 19th, September 12th, 12th or 19th. I'll get the date. So I'm like, I look at you like that. No. There's one coming up where I think there will be, but it'll be a study session. It won't be one where public comment is given. So I want you to know that that's also coming. I'll look for the date. So there will be more opportunity. I'm sorry. It's okay. Well, I'm a sociology major. I'm a criminal justice major. This is all I wanted to do in life. But there are things that I cannot always do because I work in a public organization. So my role is also to keep us knowing that this board advises that council. We are also limited in what.
And that's the reason that one of the things I really want to promote, because there have been, and as you're saying, the link that I gave you to the Westminster Homeless Initiatives, I see all the items on here, and it looks great on paper that we have all this, but the reality, I see the reality every week when I go out. There's rarely a week that I miss.
So maybe we can bring Kate in and have a conversation about more things. That's Kate Scarbeck.
Okay.
She oversees we have now 2 homeless navigators. Yes. The city's working to hire more rangers to help, and they help the navigators. So it's a partnership there. So that, because in some places it's also very scary for a single person of any type to walk into some places where you can't see anything and don't know what's happening. And so the rangers also help with that. They sort of have a lot of purposes. The study session is on September 19th, so you are all welcome to come and listen. Please do. But our next meeting is September 14th. Maybe we can ask Kate Scarbeck, who oversees those 2 navigator positions and is the most well-informed on this issue in our community. I would say better even more than other communities because she's working with both Adams and Jefferson County on this issue, and is helping us get funds to help with the Jefferson County facility that they're going to be building. It might be really good to have this conversation with Kate because maybe there's things this board can do or as volunteers or providers of to give us a space and some actual actionable things as opposed to us disagreeing with a policy and a procedure that we can't do much about, right?
It's not just policy, and I have to differ with you because today I did see one of the park rangers out there, Mike Krieger, is that right? And I encountered him before. He's very professional. He does show a compassionate, he's a former firefighter, so there's compassion in there. But neither of our navigators were there during the posting.
Yeah, so, they're there in the initial steps. They're not there through the whole process. There's 2 of them.
Right, and I also understand that. So, and that's why sometimes this is how I truly view this. It's almost like an abusive relationship that's out there because under parks, rec, and libraries, we have the homeless navigators who are trying to take care of people. And then you have the policing aspects, the park rangers, all in the same group who are.
The park rangers are parks employees.
What?
Are parks employees. The park rangers are parks employees. They work in hand with those navigators.
But does it come to the top at Tomas's?
Mm-hmm. So,
and I had a conversation with Tomas.
The parks rangers and the navigators are all on the same team. They're in different divisions. They're all on the same team. Police is separate. Police are only having interactions on private property when private property owners have called and asked for that. The only other time anybody else gets involved is community development with the code enforcement, and that's when it's on a city-owned property, and that's usually, which gets confusing because the parks are city-owned property, but the Parks Department owns those property. As opposed to, we've had some people who have been at the water treatment plants. Mm-hmm. That's a huge security risk and liability. That's different. So it's dependent on where the property is and those relationships.
Thanks, Cody, and thanks, Alan. If I may interject, I think one of the things we can come to an agreement on is that we're always limited in resources, and what can we do to beef the resources up? What can we do to like create compassionate sheltering and making sure that people who are displaced feel safe and valued? And yes, I do believe that our city policy is there. To Alan's point, though, sometimes we have policy, but we don't have the resources to maybe, really realize the policy to fruition. So I think one of the things that I would suggest in this process, and you had mentioned this, Cody, is maybe we talk to Kate, maybe Alan and myself and a few people could get together, maybe share some concerns and maybe some things about like what Alan is seeing, and of course, any of you are welcome to express some of your concerns as well, and some challenges or maybe some ideas that we have. And then let's see if we can have some dialogue that we can inventory a little bit, because I think some of it is truly, we have our experiences, which are our perceptions. What do we do to ensure that we're all on the same page so we can move forward with real recommendation, so that we are really operating with the most information in my mind? I think, Alan, this is so important, and I appreciate your compassion on this. I think it's critical. Donna, I see your hand, please.
I'd like to make a motion. Can you hear me, Justin?
Yes, Donna, I'm sorry, we lost you for a moment. You were saying I'd like to make a motion too?
Okay. I'd like to move that we invite Kate, and I did not catch the last name, whomever it is.
Starbeck.
To come to a meeting at which we can all be a part of participating in it, because I think this is a really important situation. But I'd like to move that, and then I'll speak to my motion if somebody else seconds it.
Great. Okay, so it's been seconded. Could we get the name again, Cody, just so we're operating, because I know there are a few Kates.
Starbeck, Skarebeek.
Okay, great. So it's been motioned and seconded to bring Kate in to discuss and maybe frame some questions and presentation. What discussion do we have, Donna? You had a follow-up point.
Yes, I would like to thank Alan for the time and effort he put into this proposal, but maybe it's a little too premature for that until we clearly are on the same page with some of the things that are going on at the city. And I appreciate the fact that Cody has brought that to our attention. So that's why I think it might be wise for us, before we take any further action on any proposals like this, to have that kind of information presented to us, and we can have that discussion.
Okay, well stated. Other thoughts? Yes, Alan, please.
So my purpose here was not, I was thinking of using the board as with a subcommittee, not to form a subcommittee that's investigating this, but a subcommittee to research and bring together a task force in the city. These are things that the previous council did nothing. The previous council, I remember talking to the previous, probably 6 years ago. So how many councils back? Maybe it was 7. We're seeing the same thing. So what I'm really looking at is for us to form a subcommittee, just to try to form a task force, and then we step back, we're out of it, let the task force then move ahead and do its.
What about, that'd be a wonderful idea, but I just want to make sure, which is why I sent you that email this morning.
Yeah.
I think that because this is such a topic that involves the whole city, well, everything always involves the whole city, right? But I think we need to make sure that we're in the same direction as to what Kate's program is. Does she want, or do they want us to do that? I don't think we should invest time in having a whole subcommittee or task force work on this if that's not the direction that city staff wants us to go.
And the city staff has a KPI in their strategic plan to be researching this. So there is a staff team that's doing some of this work already. So then we're duplicating or conflicting.
We don't want to do that.
maybe there's a way that we can support Kate
So
and her team in that effort. And then I don't believe that we are allowed to create a task force. We can stay as a subcommittee with our own, but if we're doing anything much beyond that, there's a process in which we need to work through the city council to be given that space.
I'm absolutely open to that. It's all about information. But my key thing is because I'm seeing what's happening out there and what's not happening. And this is just not Westminster. It's regional. You know?
It's national. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, you're hearing of a lot of cruelty in other communities around, like how they're not treating people who are on the streets with dignity, respect, and compassion. So yeah, it's definitely an issue, I think, nationally that, Alan, we want to get in front of as much as we can, for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to hear, as I heard a comment from one counselor at one point say, well, basically, let's put them on the Westminster train and send them into Denver. That was not in an official capacity, I don't believe.
Well,
But anyway,
yeah.
So absolutely, Kate, bring her in. Yes, I like Kate.
Okay.
Work with her.
So we still have a motion on the table to bring Kate into, you know.
Hold on, just for efficiency's sake and people's time, might have suggested that Kate actually come at a meeting after the study session and you all do your best to either listen to the recording of the study session. So it's maybe then it helps if everybody on the board is well informed about the presentation that staff is making to council about where we are and what's being done, then it might be a more productive conversation with Kate at a following meeting, right? Which would then be October.
Okay. Yeah.
Terrific.
Okay.
Sure.
Essentially ways that we can support her.
Right.
What we can do is.
I'm just glad that we're talking about this, as, you know, and to try and move and do something.
Yeah. Thanks, Alan. Rich, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I'd like to hear from Kate. And I've also heard some disappointing remarks from city council members. And I also appreciate the disconnect sometimes between intention and actual impact.
Yeah.
And I think that's real. But both the intention and the impact are real. It's a funny noise. There was an excellent task force that the city commissioned, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. I'm not sure exactly. Time blurs for me. And it really brought together people in real estate, in folks who are directly involved in shelters, and I mean, it was an outstanding task force. And my suggestion would be, let's pull that report, and it was a great report. Let's pull that report off the shelf and take a look at it. Because there were people who really knew what they were talking about. And the recommendations, I think, are worth revisiting.
I like that word, revisiting.
Mm-hmm. The work has been done. We just need to follow through.
Cody, is there a way to maybe?
Do you know who did that, Rich? Who led the task force? And then I just have to caution you about the receptiveness of this with the current sitting council. So,
I understand.
And then the other part, and I'm just throwing that in because this is not new, but newer information to me. There's quite a bit of legal change around this issue so we could brush it off and look at it, and some may still be possible and some may not, but but if you can tell me who did it, or if you know the name of the task force, I can see if I can track it down.
Well, I think it was the either affordable housing or homelessness task force, and it was I'm trying to remember the name of the consultant. It was a consultant who led it. She did an excellent job. I don't remember her name.
Justin, we did do a affordable housing study and strategic plan a few years ago. Do you think maybe it was that? It was
could be
led by a woman out of Fort Collins. She also
Yes.
did the language access plan work. Heidi, maybe was her
yes,
name?
Heidi. Yes. Yes. That's
Great.
right.
All I need to do is ask some questions, and here it is.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. So we can look up that report as well. And then to Cody's point, look at what's still relevant or what maybe needs to change because of policy. I want to go back though, that we do have a motion on the floor to bring Kate to a meeting. Donna, I want to go back to you because it sounds like there's a suggestion to amend that to the October meeting. So we have the opportunity to, listen to the study session that's coming up in September. So
I am amenable to correcting my motion to include that following the study meeting that the city council and Kate will have, or what that process is.
Okay.
Invitation, what if she can't make it?
Okay. So, all right. So the motion has been amended as originally stated so that Kate could come to an October session or a session hopefully as soon as possible after the study session around this issue. Do I have a new second, or does my original person who seconded want to go ahead and re-second?
Re-second, third, whatever it is.
Yeah, right. Seconded the amended motion. Okay, so any further discussion on this specific motion? Okay, so all in favor of the motion to invite Kate to after this study session to come and present some information and answer questions of the board, please indicate favor.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Okay, so moved. So Cody, if we could maybe craft some languaging and see if we could get Kate proactively, at least at our October meeting, or when she would be available.
Yes, we'll do, Justin.
Okay, thanks. Going back to Alan. So we've motioned that, Alan, you're to your point, you're definitely looking to create a subcommittee. As far as our board, we always have the power to recommend with board approval, like any motions or any recommendations to city council, such as creating a task force for this issue, but our power is more in recommendation advisory. So my thinking would be, if you want to maybe, have some more conversation about maybe some observations, or we feel we can collect some information that what we're seeing, maybe that would be a point of recommendation, that we collect information based on what our perceptions are, what our experiences are as we're seeing them, so that we could be ready to have that conversation with Kate and then make a definitive next step around what subcommittee work could be done around potential recommendations to city council. That might be something to think about. Now, I do agree with some of the friends who have stated that, it sounds like we just, you're seeing things that are definitely alarming as you described them. And there's also information that maybe we need to get on board with so that we know how to navigate and move forward in a very strategic, very thoughtful, and an intentional way.
Yes.
What kind of information additional are you looking for me to bring?
I think having that conversation with Kate first is the
Okay.
next step.
Oh, I just thought what you were saying there had to do with.
Oh, no, he was just laying the
Okay.
groundwork or the structure for how.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
just so we are very clear about everything that's in place so that we know where the potential gaps are.
Got it.
Yeah.
But it was me that
Not
kicked
just
me out.
So,
Sorry, the city website's down and I was trying
Oh,
to
okay.
gather the
That's
resources.
what I keep doing.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just so like.
I know that affordable housing study is somewhere. So, and Seth confirmed that I'm not crazy. So Piper has her hand up though.
oh, Piper, please.
Sorry, I don't. I apologize.
Yeah.
Piper.
Well, okay, so I want to bring it back to Alan. Alan, does that seem okay with you and as far as next steps?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And you know what, I can let's maybe you and I sit down and meet and talk a little bit. I'd like to hear a little bit more of like your experience in observing, because I think the more we can kind of create some narrative around this issue, I think the more on board we can all be. Donna, did you re-raise your hand?
I did.
Okay, please.
Finish your comment.
No, go ahead, please.
I would just like to tell Cody how much I appreciate the fact that she was willing to speak up here. Sometimes our staff members are a little hesitant when they feel like that they're on the other side of some of us as board members. So thank you, Cody, because I think it will help Alan to understand, excuse me, our process. And I think it's going to be far more effective for us all the way around if we do it this way. So thank you, Cody, for your help as a staff member and for your willingness to share with us.
You're welcome. I want you to be successful, so I'm trying to do the best I can. For more than one.
Okay. Any final points of discussion from Alan or anyone else on this? I think a lot more discussion to come, for sure. Thank you. Thanks, Alan, for bringing this. I think it's important work. And I second Donna's thanks and gratitude, Cody. Okay, so a couple of things. I know we're at time, so I want to honor the time. I do want to open it up for anyone who has any updates, and then I want to maybe just talk to the members who are here of our Safe and Welcoming Committee, because we have to get some on the books. We have some critical work to do, and I know our time and calendars have been all askew. So, yeah, so let's hear updates. We'll just kind of go down the list. Okay, so food access. Bev, anything with food access at this point that you'd like to share?
I have nothing on that, but I just wanted to remind people that we have down in historic South Westminster, we have the Around the World Street Fair this Saturday from 10 to 4 at 73rd and Bradburn. Hopefully folks can come to that.
Awesome. And Bev, I want to also acknowledge, I know a while back you were looking at like how to partner with our city libraries in creating resources, and got an exciting email. And I know Cody forwarded that information to me actually during this meeting. We actually have a program that I can certainly speak to you and whoever else is interested offline, but one of our librarians is interested in coming in to our next meeting and sharing some work with that and how we can get involved. So we can maybe finally, we can finally see some of that work you were doing, you know, a while back come to fruition. So, yeah. Great. So see, I had a committee report you didn't even know about, but there it is. So, yeah, and Bev, thanks for laying that foundation. So if you want, we can talk offline a little bit, and Cody, I'll read that information, get a little more information, maybe connect with you. So I'm in the know for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have some time. I think the program's 2023, the one specifically that he sent us, but it's a good way to open the door. So, yeah.
Okay, I'll just kind of open it up. Any further conversation, although if, again, I can have my friends, Piper, I know Miguel's out, Doug, I don't know if Juliet's on, Megan I know is not at this time. So if you could stay on for a few minutes after we release everyone else from the meeting, that would be great. Any other updates for the good of the order? Yes, Doug, please.
Let's see, I just wanted to say I got an email from one of the librarians on a different topic. They are having some drop-in free tech help from basic to advanced computer skills plus job help. And they are looking for volunteers to help out with this. So if there's anybody who's interested, or if you have any mechanisms for getting word out to people, I have some verbiage here that we can use to get that word out. So it's a really great program. They do a lot of good stuff. So I just wanted to get that out.
Great, Doug. Could you send that information to the board or to myself and to Cody? That'd be great.
Yep, I will send that.
Thank you.
Is that something that we can have city staff put on Nextdoor?
It may already, we can't do next door. City staff doesn't have access to
I thought we had, no, the communications team doesn't. It's only Sherry Spocky then. Just, okay.
Maybe, because I think it
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But we can do others.
Yeah. And maybe,
Else on the two.
and maybe that's something that we can talk about, since we don't have time tonight, but maybe next meeting, we can talk a little bit about maybe coordinating efforts just with board members based on your neighborhood. We can actually start to get some of this information out via Nextdoor.
Good idea.
So.
I think that's a great idea, and it could be.
I know, but it's like, it still, it reaches 50%. 50% of all people are signed up for it.
Those kinds of posts are better than some of the other ones that happen.
Yep,
So,
that's so true. All right.
Yeah, okay, that's great, Michelle, thank you. Okay, other points? Okay, friends. Well, if we don't hear anything, I'll keep you updated on, like I said, the hiring process for the position. Please give us feedback by Monday morning at 8 o'clock if you've got it around the position that Larry presented earlier. You have that as part of the email that Kate had sent out. And I'm showing 7:37. We will officially adjourn the Inclusivity Board meeting. And then those of you that I've asked to stay, if you could hang out for a few minutes, that'd be great. Thank you all. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.